Hello, I'm Robin from Multimusic Technology. Now, Korg invited me down to London for a special preview of the Korg Gallery, which is an exhibition that's being hosted by the Musical Museum in Brentford. The Musical Museum is a fantastic place. It charts the history and social history of music reproduction, sound reproduction, instruments. It's full of extraordinary devices like player pianos, Wurlitzers, gramophones and other such things you would not believe. But in one side, in a room, they've got together with Korg to put on sort of the entire history of the Korg synthesizer company. From the very beginnings with a little, not so little, quite large drum machine, through to all of the fabulous things that we know and love today. So I took the opportunity to talk to Luke Edwards, who's their brand ambassador, proper top-end product specialist, and he walked me through the entire space, taking in all the different bits and pieces, and we just chatted. Now, this is not the most professional filming you've ever seen, similar to the building noise you can hear outside my shed here. I just like to do things on the hoof, and so I just had a camera in my hand and a recorder in the other hand, and we wandered around and we talked and looked and poked at all the different products and the bits and pieces. I hope that's interesting. It's not brilliantly filmed, as I say, and there's bits that I've had to sort of cut in the camera microphone for because it got a bit rattly on the recorder. Bits and pieces like that. So it's not a perfect presentation, but I hope that it reflects something of the enormous and extraordinary history of Korg. I hope you find some interesting little nuggets of conversation in there, and I present it more or less as it is to you. So here's the Korg Gallery. So here we are at the Korg exhibition at the Musical Museum in Brentford, in some back alley of London, and we're going to talk to Luke from Korg. Hello. And take our way through the history that starts in 1962. So yeah, tell us what it's about. Why are we here? The Korg Gallery, as it's called.
So yeah, we've set up this Korg Gallery in the museum, in the Musical Museum, which is in Brentford, in London, which has lots of vintage instruments, as you can.
Fantastic.
And we've been lucky enough to procure this room, and we've sourced lots of vintage synths, some from ours, some from donors, and managed to get pretty much all of the synths we've made, certainly the iconic ones, throughout history.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's cool.
So when did it all begin?
It all began in, as you can see on the wall there, 1962 in Tokyo, Japan. And the company was founded by Tsutomu Kato, so Kato's son, and a guy called Tadashi Osanai. And so Kato was a nightclub owner originally, and Osanai was an accordion player in his nightclub. And they decided, they were using an instrument called a Wurlitzer Sideman at the time, which was basically a big drum machine. And they decided they wanted to develop their own version of that, and an enhanced version. And that's where our first product came out, the Donkomatic, which is a big washing machine-sized drum machine with lots of preset rhythms, and you could trigger the sound yourself with a little keyboard. And it was called the Donkomatic because that's what it sounded like. It sounded like donka, donka, donka when it played, apparently.
Right. So we're looking at, organs were the first place that these sort of automatic rhythms existed.
Exactly.
Before people like Roland pulled that out with the CR78 and such like. Is it all that kind of era that we're looking at?
Yeah, and if you look at these are very much similar to that kind of style of instrument as well. So that's where it graduated into sort of tabletop or instruments that were put on top of organs to give you a backing.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
Things like the mini pops as well, which we did in the late 60s. And then we graduated onto making keyboard-based instruments, and partly thanks to the when Fumio Maeda joined Korg in those early days, and he's still with the company now. He was behind some of the iconic products like the PS3300 and the OS20 and many other products. But he developed Prototype 1, which is the one on the bottom left there, and that was basically an organ, but it did have what we called a traveller on there. which is effectively a filter. So
Right.
that was one of the very first synthesizers produced in Japan, because it could be called a synthesizer because it had that traveller or filter on there.
And this was
that's really-
67.
yes, so it's pretty early on. And that traveller then found its way onto things like the Mini 700. So it was still, even this was our first commercially produced synthesizer. This was the original, and it had this traveller filter on there. So it's
See, I think, I mean, it's really interesting because it's a beautiful piece of work.
Yeah.
I think it's very unique in the way that it's in that its look. I mean, I guess at the time probably not, but when we view it now, it seems odd. You know, everything is
the layout.
Yeah, everything is upside down, and yet you go, oh yeah, because you feel like it would sit on top of a Rose piano or
That's exactly
you know,
what it's
something
like.
of that.
On top of a Rose, on top of an organ, and that's why all the controls are here, because they're easier to access.
Yeah.
When you're playing the lower manual, you can just quickly get to these, and then these are obviously monophonic, so they were used for playing melodies, lead lines, sometimes bass lines.
Of course, yeah.
depending what
And the switches, I mean, you know, I love. I've got things in my hands. Obviously, I love the.
They just feel great to use as well.
Yeah.
This is the modern equivalent because we reissued it, but yeah, they feel, even on the original, they feel great.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing.
And the Traveller is quite interesting because it's basically a low pass filter and a high pass filter, which you can use simultaneously to sweep through, but you can also separate them. So you can then kind of use it like a band pass filter to sculpt out specific frequencies. So
Right,
it's
yeah,
a great
nice.
design. Yeah.
So we're looking at 1973
Yes.
for that fella. And then, I mean, funny enough, I was reading about this earlier on,
Right,
going, so what is it that I know about the 3300? Oh, I don't know anything at all. But the MS-20, which we have sitting here,
Yeah.
is kind of a direct descendant of the
It is,
3300.
because that came out a year before the MS-20.
Yeah.
That was like the pinnacle of what Korg did for synthesis in those days, the 3200, and then the MS-20 was very much the sort of commercial version of it, which was a much downgraded monophonic version of it, if you like, but still.
Yeah, because we had a lot of trouble. I mean, all around the same time, you got the Polymoog and this is just before the Prophet 5.
Yes.
So you've got all these enormous synths like the Yamaha GS What's It, filling
Yeah,
up
yeah.
all these huge spaces,
Yeah.
trying to do polyphony
Yeah.
with synthesizers. And this was Korg's take on that. 'Cause
It
you've
was.
got, have you got, is it voices per
It's
note?
full-
Is that what I
full
understand?
polyphony, yeah, 48 voice.
Yeah.
And times 3 because you've got 3 oscillators.
Yeah.
So it's pretty incredible what they achieved back then to do
Yeah.
that. And this is our remake of it, but it's essentially a similar thing. But the original didn't have presets.
Right.
So, but the 3200 did have.
Yeah.
So we brought that across to our reissue, but otherwise this is pretty much a 3300. Slightly smaller because the original was a lot deeper than this because of the circuitry.
Yeah.
So modern.
So were you having a voice card per voice?
yeah,
Yeah?
yeah.
Okay. That's just crazy talk,
It
isn't
is
it?
crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
And you can see why just taking one of those cards and sticking it into something like this would make so much sense.
Yeah.
But then it depends. I mean, you've got to think about what people wanted at the time, because it's almost as if the instrument industry was only listening to Rick Wakeman and Emerson and
Yeah.
such like that.
Yeah.
You know, people of that ilk, as opposed no one was thinking of the home user.
Not at all.
Really,
No.
they were thinking of what instruments can we provide these huge bands.
Yeah.
Um,
And they were all using them just for monophonic stuff, really, just like leads and
yeah.
basses and things like that. Yeah. I suppose probably partly because of the limitations of the instruments as well. But.
Yeah. It's nuts. And what's this big thing?
So this is an MS-20 Blackboard. So this was produced in Japan. The very, very few of these produced, probably around 50 we think, we don't know exactly, but it's very, very low numbers. And these were produced to teach synthesis in classrooms and colleges. So it's essentially an MS-20, the circuitry is the same. It has a little keyboard built in and a speaker, but everything else is the same. It's just a sort of exploded view of an MS-20. Great for teaching on.
Yeah, I can imagine. But the fact that was taught,
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
is a great thing. Because we think of music technology being as a course, or people talking about synthesis as being a very new new event.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, why did the MS-20 come back? Because this is one of the first sort of... Because, I mean, Korg seemed to have been driving this sort of looking backwards at history and analog stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you seem to do it before everybody else, whether it was the mini log or
we did
not
do
the mini
it.
log, the micro. What's a flip?
The first one we did was the monotron. So that was really our first journey back into analog since I think the Monopoly in the early 80s.
Yeah.
So full analog. And that was very much an experiment which worked very well. So then it was really that kicked off the Volcas, and then started reissuing things like the MS-20 and then the mini log, and then the story goes on.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But I mean, what was the culture that enabled that to happen? Because at the time, I mean, sort of timeline wise, everything had gone into the box. Everything was software.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I'm in writing all these articles that I've been doing over the last sort of 6 months to a year. I'm definitely seeing like a waves in the industry where everything goes from analog. We threw all that out because we love digital waveforms for no reason other than there were reasons. They're simpler to tune, and you know, they're more convenient for studios.
I think there's a few reasons.
And then that all got sucked into computers.
Yeah.
And then somehow out the other end, you know, we had virtual analog and stuff knocking around, like you've got your prophecy thing over there, which was a lot of fun, I remember.
Yeah.
And then we all started ballooning out of the box again, which is exactly, I guess, how it should have been.
Amazing how it's gone full circle, it really.
Yeah.
I think people recognised eventually that, especially something like an MS-20, to get that MS-20 filter is virtually impossible in software. I've never heard it emulated like the real thing. As good as emulations are now, there's nothing like hearing that.
Yeah.
That with the resonance cranked and just screeching through, it's very, very difficult to replicate for whatever reason. But that's the beauty of analog.
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there an element that you've got this sort of the underground movement of dance music in the early 90s that were digging all the analog stuff out of the bin?
Yeah. That definitely is part of it, because obviously it's not just us, it's other companies like Roland and everyone.
Yes.
Drum machines and MS-20s, and they started finding their own niche in electronic music production, alongside, you know, stuff in the box and the digital instruments as well. So, and then it just grew. It seemed to have been growing from there, really.
It is a fascinating thing. So there were other MS things around the 20.
There was a whole range. As you can see, you had the MS-10, which is basically a single oscillator MS-20. There's a couple of other differences, but that's the main difference. And then you had the MS-50, and you also had a sequencer as well, which I don't think is on there, but there was a sequencer in that range as well. So you had a whole range of these things, and the VC10 vocoder.
Oh right, kind of is that fella there, SQ10 on there?
That's the one. Yeah.
Cool. See, I've never had any love for vocoders. There's nothing about it that
nothing appeals to you.
Nothing appeals. No, it always feels cheesy. Always feels you know, disco or Daft Punk or something. I'm sure people do wonderful things with them. It's just never thrilled me.
Yeah.
You know. Although I mean, I've used that microphone that came with what did it come with? I've got a Micro Korg XL. I think.
Yeah.
I've used that for all sorts of things.
It's a handy little gooseneck mic.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's very useful. Yeah. Plug it into all sorts of things. So, is this going to be a going concern?
Yeah, it is. We're just still waiting for precise production details. Is it still going?
Right. Yeah, still going.
Yeah, we're still waiting for precise production details at the moment. So we're hoping by the end of the year or into early next year they'll be rolling and then available.
So, I mean, I don't know if that question, how long is a piece of string, but do you anticipate selling lots of them? Or is it?
We've got a long waiting list already, so
really?
I don't think we're going to be short of people to sell to. It's just how many Japan can make, really. It's more of a question.
How interesting is that? I mean...
so we're bearing in mind the price, which is, we don't even know the price, but it's going to be around £13,000 to £15,000. So, yeah.
There's something about it. I mean, it's like watching Analog Solutions. Go from they toyed with little boxes, they toyed with slightly larger synths, and then he said, "Oh fuck it, let's just build this enormous thing. And people are buying it. You go, wow, that's extraordinary.
It is extraordinary, yeah. But
so there's definitely a market and a thirst for it. I mean, I'm assuming that the full size 2600 has done all right.
oh, it did incredibly well. In fact, we could have probably sold 3 or 4 times as many as we had of those.
Yeah.
So it just
Has that come to an end?
It has come. Yeah, it came to an end after one day.
Okay.
So,
right.
so the day it was announced on NAMM show, we had to just close the book straight away, pretty much. So that's why the mini version happened, because to kind of.
Yeah. Why not do something if some people want it? You know?
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, it's not the same thing, but it still gives people access to that sound if that's what they're after.
Yeah.
But there's something about having the original, isn't there?
Yeah. All right. So, what happened here then?
Yeah,
It's kind of back to organs again.
Yeah, so this was a range they made with the Lambda, the Sigma and the Delta, these 3.
Okay.
And these were kind of, harking a little bit back to the organ user interface, with a little bit more preset driven in terms of different instruments. Because if you look on here, you've got things like electric bass, tuba, clavs and horns and brass instruments and things, and strings. And like that one, that's called the Delta, and that one's a string machine and a synth in one.
Mm-hmm.
So around this time, there was a trend towards having string machines and more kind of focused in synthesizers for particular instruments.
But also a collection, because I recently did a one on Moog, and talking about their, obviously my memory is terrible. Is it the Constellation?
Yeah.
Where they had a group of different things that included like the Rogue and the
exactly.
other things that they brought together.
Yeah. And then out of
you
that,
got a suite.
Out of that kind of distilled itself down into a single product called the Trident, which was basically 3 building blocks of sound in one thing.
Okay.
Hence the Trident. So you had a synth, a brass instrument, and a string section.
Okay.
So and then you could layer those 3 together. So there definitely was a trend around that time for those kind of synths.
Alas, a synthesizer that doesn't sound synthetic.
Yeah, that was talking about the Lambda, which is this one, which is a nice string synthesizer.
Do you think there was always a sense of trying to replicate real instruments? Do you think that's always been a thing, or is there an element where we just wanted to sound like a synthesizer?
I think originally that's what they were designed to be, because even if you look back at like the MS-20 manuals, in the back they've got all these patch examples, and they're all like trumpet, trombone, flute.
Yeah.
So they're obviously trying to do that. Whether they necessarily succeeded is another conversation. Some were closer than others, but
that's a great advert.
That was their it's cool, and that was their aim. But it ended up just becoming an instrument in its own right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these are very recognisable. Now we're back into the 80s, where everything starts changing.
This was very much the end of the analogue sort of generation, the early 80s now. Yeah, with the Monopoly and the Poly 6.
See, that's much bigger than I thought.
Yeah, it's a lot deeper, isn't it, than you remember it?
Yeah, very much. I mean, funny enough, it's the one thing that Behringer looked like they did a good job on.
Yeah,
you know,
they didn't do bad,
their flip-up ones, the Poly D this, the MS5, is it? They've done a Roland one. You know, if they didn't do anything else, those 3 are, are nice-looking machines. So, is there any interest in Korg of resurrecting things like this? I mean, they've done software versions.
Yeah, we've done software versions of most of the things in this room almost now. But yeah, I'd love to see a reissue of the Monopoly. I think that would be. That's the one we get asked for most. It just has his kind of like legendary status alongside some other things.
Because I mean, Behringer's always going to be a factor. We can't ignore it. But I think there's room for both. I think at one point. It was kind of alarming, the raft of synthesizers they could produce for ridiculous amounts of money, or ridiculous small amounts of money. But I think, with the ARP reissues and such like, I think it's sort of proven.
I think it's proven because of the ARP Odyssey, they did a version of that. We still sell ours. MS-20, they did their version of that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the case.
Yeah, it's If they do what they do, that's fine. But obviously, with a genuine article, that's fine. We just do what we do. So.
Yeah. So it's got 4 oscillators.
4 oscillators, and it had this neat round. So you could play 4-note poly.
Yeah.
You could also do a round robin thing where you play the same note and it will cycle through the 4 oscillators. Which
would it do that with a 3300, like an 8 voice?
I don't think so. No, I
Okay.
don't think it does. I think it only, and then the Poly 6 was 6-note poly, contemporary of the Juno 6.
Yeah.
So,
It sort of looks like a regular synthesizer. I mean,
Yeah.
how one imagines a regular polyphonic
well, it's like,
synthesizer to
yeah.
look these days.
but it does. It's like Juno 6, Prophet 5 sort of
Yeah.
styling, and it's So. And
Nice.
then you, as you can see, the styling changed quite radically when we
Yeah.
got to the digital era.
So is there a particular reason for that? Was there a different design department, or was it just the technology that was driving
I
it?
think it's technology that's driving it, obviously, with the DX7 coming out and being a massive hit.
Of course, yeah. Bloody DX7.
That pretty much drove everyone to move away from analog circuitry and go down the digital route, or at least hybrid
Yeah.
in the meantime. And it was just a trend. People were, like you was alluding to earlier with analog synths, people were thinking they're expensive, they go out of tune, they go wrong. I just want to, maybe go down a different route. And obviously the sound of music was changing radically in that time with the 80s sound and a combination of analog and digital, and then purely digital. That was the trend. So.
Take back up.
It just looks so 80s. That
It does,
amazing.
What were we thinking?
And obviously with the advent of MIDI as well, around the same time, it's transformative really in terms of.
Was
connectivity.
Korg involved in that in a design stage, or did it just adopt
it was
it?
Korg, it was Kakahashi from Roland, it was Dave Smith from Sequential,
Yeah.
it was Korg, Yamaha.
Oh, cool.
They were the 4 or 5 main people, I think, involved. But it's amazing that they did actually all get together and thrash that out.
Yeah.
I can't really imagine that happening now.
I mean, they've tried so hard with this MIDI 2.0 thing, it just
Yeah.
feels like it's dragging on forever.
Whereas with the original MIDI, they absolutely nailed it. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
a testament to how
amazing.
good it is that it's still used today. And couldn't really imagine not having it now.
No, indeed.
So the DWs are interesting because they're pure hybrids. So they're digital waveforms but analog filters. So that very much bridged the two worlds, but still very.
Yeah, but what did we do to that interface? I mean,
I know.
I'm what am I now? 53. So I grew up in the 80s.
Yeah.
And I kind of got into I was into synthesizer music, but not the actual synths until probably 82, 83 onwards. So I was brought up in this kind of interface.
Yeah.
So when I found the Korg M1, for instance, I thought it was just the most amazing thing I'd ever come across. I had a DX100,
Yeah.
But so I didn't know the joy of a filter knob.
No. Yeah.
It was alien to me. So this just seemed completely normal.
Yeah.
But I can't quite wrap my head around it now that we put up with these sorts of interfaces. We just got a couple of digits,
That's it.
and you've got a slider.
Yeah. And that just used that for every parameter, and you just cycle through all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just programming a DX100, you just go one button and then you change a thing, button, change a thing,
Same with the
another
DX7,
button, change a thing.
it's just like, that's the way it was.
Yeah, it's just the way it was, and that was fine. And so then we finished this part of the journey, I suppose you could say.
Yeah, all sort of the digital
Coming to
side of
digitals.
our development culminated in the M1 really.
Yeah.
Which is a massive story at the time. Being a workstation, one of the very first workstations, pulling in different ways of doing things and different functionality into one synth.
Yeah.
Program mode for programming sounds, 8-part combi. If you think about that back then, you had the D50 which came out the previous year, which had 2 parts, and then suddenly you've got 8 parts which you can stack on an M1.
Well, it's just these huge sounds, you know. I'd go into Rose Morris, I remember, on a trip to London, and you'd plug into this thing, and they were just
Even the first patch, Universe.
Yeah, exactly.
It's amazing.
These enormous sounds with these little digital birds going around the place, and,
Yeah.
you know, immersed into these little environments and
having the
worlds
sequencer
and
on there as
stuff.
well was a killer. 8-track
Absolutely.
sequencer with drums and everything. You could produce a whole song on them. That was what made it very different from anything that had come before, really.
Yeah, just
And all of those
completely
iconic
bonkers.
sounds, like the piano, the organ, the choirs,
Yeah.
which still endure today.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing.
And you have
What's
all these
this
cards.
gorgeous thing?
So this is the prologue. So this is a little bit a curveball, but this was when we launched the prologue in 2018. This was on the floor of the NAMM show, so it was very much a custom edition of the prologue.
See,
I'm not even sure it works, but it looks.
I mean, it's funny. I feel times have changed since then, because I remember covering the news at NAMM
Yeah.
for that one.
Yeah.
And there was lots of suggestions. There was a few leaks. There's some podcast about some new synth that Korg were doing.
Yeah.
And it had a level of excitement and anticipation that we don't feel so much anymore. There's something we've gone over a hump
Yeah, we
somewhere
have.
where
Because-
it's different now.
Yeah, that was very much off the back of the mini log, really, because
Yeah.
I think the mini log was a couple of years before that, and then we hadn't done a big analog synth at that point, so it was big news.
Yeah, I think so.
No, and no one else really had either. I don't think from memory, but
No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
No. Don't know what's happened to NAMM now. NAMM is a strange beast.
yeah, it is. I think last year it was coming back, but it was nowhere near
Right.
what it was. So we'll see. carry on
Right,
this way,
this way. Right,
go
we've
to
got
the
lost
90s.
around the
Yeah.
corner. So, yeah.
Sidetracked. Yeah. So then we're on to 1990, which is the Wave Station. So yeah, another.
See, if you forgive me for saying, it seems like one of the dullest things. You know, it kind of felt like,
You mean look at it?
yeah, it's not particularly exciting, but then nothing really was synthesizer-wise at this time.
No, it wasn't. They all looked like a lot of Yamaha synths looked like that, didn't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Like SYs and things like that. They just didn't have much personality. They sounded good, but they just very sort of minimalist, really, I suppose.
Trying to find something that, I don't know, trying to get my head into the thinking at the time, because there was not everything had gone featureless. The computer, I suppose, was starting to get involved in everything.
Yeah.
Samplers, of course, were taken away from synthesizers anyway.
Yeah.
Although this is interesting. This is a new one, though.
Yeah,
isn't
this
it?
is our reissue.
This is the
it's the Wave State, sorry, the
So
big version.
I guess you're saying that it's the evolution of one to
Exactly.
the other.
That's
yeah.
why we put it there. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's sort of still using that wave sequencing technology, but in a more
course,
modern way,
yeah.
and with more hands-on control.
Absolutely, yeah.
So we're
Because
kind
that
of
makes
going
sense.
back to that again.
Yeah.
But having the digital sounds, but being able to manipulate them easier.
Yeah, because the wave sequencing was really clever.
Yeah.
But again, it was hidden away behind
And
this.
you couldn't really
This
program it.
interface.
Yeah, very easily at all. Yeah. Another thing, so there's the wave sequencing and the vector synthesis
Yeah.
on here, which was cool. And Dave Smith from Sequential was at Korg at that time, so he helped develop that technology.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah.
Can't
And then
remember
through the
this.
90s, Prophecy you were talking about before.
Yeah.
So these two came out the same year, the Trinity and Prophecy. So the Trinity was very much a souped up M1, if you like, workstation.
Well, it was everything, wasn't
Yeah.
it? It was because I was working at Turnkey at this time and selling
So you remember
selling
these, yeah.
Trinities and Trions
Yeah.
and stuff all the time, and it just had everything in the one box. You had Roland JVs as in the other camp.
Yeah.
You had a rack of Korg down one side, Roland down the other side.
1080 and 2080 was great.
Yeah, they sort of took everything into a rack space to make it a little bit more out of the way.
Yeah.
This was brilliant though. This
Yeah,
was
it
all
was.
by itself. It was a lot of fun.
And again, different technology, different synthesis again, because it's modelling. So
Yeah.
physical modelling. This was originally used in the wave drum the previous year, and then it was sort of adapted to be used in the Prophecy. So kind of modelling the synthesis instead of sample based,
Yeah.
but still digital, obviously.
But it had a couple of knobs, you see. It had the express and controller over here.
Yeah,
that
that's
you
right.
could
Slot
use.
control is quite unique
Yeah.
with a ribbon on it, but it also be able to move it like this.
Did it have guitar strap nodules on the side? I don't think
I
it
don't
did.
think it did. But I, have
could have
seen,
done.
I think I've seen people use these, so they must have had them adapted. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, Prodigy liked this instrument. They used it a fair bit.
Yeah. Definitely it was a winner.
Yeah, it was cool. And then we had the Triton, which very much following the footsteps of the Trinity.
Yeah.
It was kind of like the industry standard top keyboard for many years on stage. Lots of studio musicians loved it. And you also had the Triton, that's the classic, but you had the Triton Studio as well, which had the CD drive.
CD drive.
So you could literally make your song and then burn it onto a CD in one
Fantastic.
keyboard.
That's
in
fantastic.
those days. Yeah.
Because at this sort of time, I think I'd gone more over to running the software side, and then we're thinking about developing Carillon around the end of the 90s.
Right, yeah.
So
it was that because that's 99, yeah. So it was around that time, yeah.
So I was starting to look into building DAW systems and digital workstations that way. And these were the enemy at that point.
Of course they were,
It's like, do you go for a hardware-based? Don't go for hardware. Look, it's software. You got a mouse and everything.
Yeah.
You could run Rebirth.
Yeah.
And
that was
Cubase.
At the time. Rebirth,
Yeah. Get your little Keyfax Fat Boy MIDI controller. You're away. Yeah.
So and if we go around the corner, also in that same year, in 1999, we launched the Electribes.
Good Lord, you see, this is such a leap,
And
isn't
the
it?
Chaos Pad.
Isn't that such an enormous leap?
It is an enormous leap, yeah.
To have the wherewithal to go, right, we need something different. I mean, was the Roland Groovebox, the MC303, was that around at this point?
That was a little bit late, I think.
So who had this Groovebox first, I guess is what I'm trying to get to. To
be honest, I'm not sure. It was around the same time, definitely.
Because it's an extraordinary leap. I mean, it like pulls in stuff from the old boxes that I guess the dance musicians were using.
Yeah.
So the 303s and the 808s, it brings all that gives you to life.
Yeah, and like really nice synth sounds as well. And
yeah.
Being able to layer different lots of patterns as well. And and they were really popular and still going now. I just see the evolution of them. And then of course,
yeah. I mean,
these
it is
are more
and it isn't.
yeah.
It's kind of like, is it a MIDI controller? No, it's a real thing.
These are people's favourites. I think.
Yeah.
I think they're great.
I mean, it's my favourite iPad app.
Yeah. No, the app's great actually.
Yeah. No, that's great fun.
And then we also, in that same year, had the Chaos Pad series. So
yeah.
KP1, which is that one there, the original.
Good. So starting to think about live performance in a different way than just a piano keyboard.
Yeah. Exactly. And then the Chaosilator happened, which was the sort of synth version of the Chaos Pad as well.
Yeah. Which of course translated to the phone really well.
Yeah.
Or to your iPad.
Yeah. The iOS version is great. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool. So why is it that the Microkorg is so well thought of?
That's a good question.
Because I bought the XL thinking it was just a slightly better version than that.
Yeah.
But they're very different.
Completely different engines.
And that sort of threw me. So I kind of ended up with this thing I didn't actually know that I wanted. I mean, it's knocked around and it's been very useful.
Yeah.
But it's not. Whenever I hear people talk about the Microkorg, I go, I got the wrong one.
I think that Microkorg, there's a couple of reasons it is endured and was so successful and is successful. First of all, if you roll back a couple of years, this came out in 2002, but 2 years before that we had the MS2000, which was a great synthesizer.
Yeah.
And basically the engine of the MS2000 is in that.
Yeah, because that was virtual analog, wasn't it?
It was virtual analog.
But done in a very analog style.
And it had lots of controls on it.
Yeah.
So that was really one of the first ones that started as this step back to analog in terms of hands-on control.
Yeah.
We put that engine in there, simplified it, but still kept that great kind of VA sound. Made it really easy to use with a genre knob, which was unique at the time as well. Easy controls on the right. Vocoder, people seem to like that. And
some people seem to like
not you,
some
people yeah. And obviously the footprint's tiny, you can put it anywhere, really portable, runs on batteries. It was just a winning formula, really.
It was,
but actually in the beginning, so I'm told, it wasn't.
Okay.
So we had to work quite hard at the marketing in the very early days to switch people onto it. But once it got going, then it was just...
I mean, it's an odd looker.
Yeah.
It's not immediately beautiful, and it does have sort of slight nightmare reflections of the 80s stuff.
It does a little bit, yeah.
With its list of patch names and
But
that
I
kind
think
of
at the time, it didn't. Nothing else looked like that because everything was very modern, sleek. This has vintage vibes about it.
It does, yeah.
With the wooden end cheeks, which nothing did at that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it just.
So I always assumed as well, having this, is that there would be a lid for it along at some point.
Right, yeah.
Because of the lip around the outside, but that never happened.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the XL when it first came out. That was originally designed to replace that, but because that was still doing so well, they decided to run them alongside.
Yeah.
But different.
It sounds good.
Different sound engine.
Yeah,
this
no,
is
the
based on
sound
the
engine has always been good.
Sound engine.
Right.
Yeah. Like a sit-down version.
So the new one then, this is the what are you calling it, a reissue or reimagining?
No, it's just a Micro Korg 2, so it's a new model of the original.
Right.
The original is still carrying on for the time being.
Really? I've been doing that for years.
Yeah, so it's actually just become the best-selling synthesizer ever, the Micro Korg has. Yeah, taken over from the M1.
Crazy.
But yeah, so we've kept the genre select, we've kept these real-time controls,
Yeah.
but also we've got a modern screen on here now,
Nice.
which is colour-coded to these knobs. And then when you go into any of these different parameters, you can see you've got a nice visual. So you can see what's going on. But it still sounds great. But it is a different sound engine.
Yeah.
Beefed up effects section, but essentially it's a Micro Korg with extra stuff on.
So the trick is not to break something which is good.
Exactly right. That's I think the challenge they had with the designing of it as well, because they didn't want to have too much of a departure. So
yeah. But I mean, Korg has done really well in this, in that slightly larger format that you do with the wave state, the mod wave, the OPSIC, things like that.
That's
I think it's a really good size, a really good space.
Yeah.
Your pricing's been good in that. It's a fairly lightweight thing. You can almost feel the Raspberry Pi start up inside as you turn it on. Yeah. But heck, I mean, it works and it's controllable and they sound good. Yeah. And it's not too expensive. You've got a lot of synth for your money. And
I
the
really
size
like the software integration with them as well, because you get the full editor and everything, and it just works straight away. And it's brilliant.
It's kind of what Arturia keep trying to do and never quite got there yet.
Yeah.
They keep mixing their software and hardware together.
Yeah, that's definitely been a winning formula for us. Great sense.
Yeah, nice. So, was that it? Have we done it?
I think we have. And
there's a little bits over here.
Hands-on there, but these are all current products, so this is just for people who come, they can, try stuff out and explore the range really.
Which is great. I mean, the Minilog has been a great little synthesizer. Yeah. I think that was a really fabulous thing, and that's got to be old now, isn't it?
Yeah, 2016.
Yeah.
And the XD as well continues to do really well for us as well, the Minilog XD. Yeah. Which is like the Minilog, but has then the digital oscillator as well and a beefed up effects section, which is incredible. So
yeah, it's definitely what was driving it along. I mean, talking of Arturia, you've got the sort of at a similar time you had the mini brutes and micro brutes or that kind of thing, all pushing this.
It was great,
hands-on stuff, rediscovering synthesizers. I think that's been excellent. It's been such an exciting time. How have the little kits? How's the new tech stuff done?
Yeah, really well. And we're actually just waiting for this one, the Chaos Pad, which we just launched. So that should be coming in any time. So we're excited for that one. And yeah, can't get enough of these. And we also do the little oscilloscope one as well, which is good. The NS2.
I've got the one and the two.
Yeah,
they are. They're very super useful. Super useful. Although, of course, it got announced just after I sourced one from a screen little oscilloscope from China. Well, that's just my life. That's always happened.
Is it?
Yeah. I find some little thing I must have, and then somebody brings out a proper version of it.
Right. Okay.
Great. So what's this fella here then?
Yeah, so basically what we've done here for the museum, we've just set up
This is a key stage.
This is a key stage.
This is a MIDI 2.0
MIDI 2.0 controller with polyphonic aftertouch.
Oh,
we've got it. Yeah.
It's like it doesn't exist, this thing. It must have a different looking MIDI port. No, you see, of course,
that's the same.
It's the same.
So we've just set up all of our Korg collection synths because a lot of these synths are in the room, which is quite nice, and then people
course,
can
yeah.
try out the digital versions with the key stage.
That's good. See, I've had the old Korg software.
The legacy one.
Yeah,
the original,
years and years and years ago, and it was brilliant.
It is brilliant, yeah.
And it just
just been
continues to
adding more and
build.
more.
Yeah, it's almost
So-
like you woke it up again a few years ago, going, "Oh, look, we have this thing. We really should make more of it."
Yeah, and they've added all sorts. They've added, both Tritons. And, yeah, phenomenal. All the digital stuff's brilliant as well.
We'll talk a little bit about the ARP stuff. So where did the ARP connection come from?
So the ARP connection, well, ARP was a brand, as you can see, they were big in the 70s from the timeline, so it was early 70s through to 1980, and then went into the early 80s, but then I think they basically went out of business sometime in the 80s. I don't
Happened
think
a lot, didn't it?
Yeah, a lot of companies went,
Yeah.
But back then they were really influential, especially with the Odyssey, because that was very much going up against the the Moog equivalent, and it was like a cheaper alternative.
Yeah.
I mean, lots of artists were using ARP back then, but so it kind of lied dormant for many years.
Yes.
Then David Friend, who was one of the original founders, saw what we did with the MS-20 Mini
Right.
and approached us a year or two after that had come out and said, "Do you fancy doing something together and reinvigorating or reimagining the ARP brand together?" And so we said, "Yeah, we'll give it a go." And that's where the ARP Odyssey came from. So that was the first product we did, the Mini one.
That's
at the
right.
end.
Yeah.
And that was really successful. And then we had, the bigger version, which that's a full-size version, but a kit version. But the question was always, when are you going to do the 2600 once we've gone down this road? And we'd get that question for quite a few years. And eventually, in 2020, we did it with the full-size 2600.
Yeah.
And then the mini version followed.
And as you say, you sold out in a day.
Yeah. Which was crazy.
Yeah. So this came in pieces in the box, and then you had to sort of put it together.
No soldering or anything, you just sort of put it together. But yeah, it's some people really enjoy that process of building their own synths.
It's a nice idea.
Yeah, and to have the full size one, and it's amazing how much. I think that's something like 86% of the size, but this looks so much bigger.
It does. But then this by itself doesn't look small.
It doesn't.
It's well done. I mean, I think it's a very pretty looking synth.
It is. Yeah.
And because there was an orange version, wasn't there, of the 2600?
There was 3 visions of that, and 3 visions of this.
Yeah.
That's the original. But there was also a blue one, which was called the Blue Mini.
That's right.
And then the orange and black, which looked like this paneling. And there was 3 visions of this, which was the Rev 1, which is silver.
Yeah.
And then the Rev 2, which is that one, gold and black. And then the Rev 3, which is at the end. And then you had some other products in between, things like the Omni and the Quadra.
There was a Quadra at Synthfest last year, was it?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the 2500 was the one really that started it all.
Yeah.
That was a much bigger unit, and that's the one that featured in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's been a fascination of mine for a long time. I mean, I think I picked up all the Behringer ones.
Okay, yeah.
All the modules that they made for that.
Oh, did you? Right,
It's sitting in a case, and I've never used it all together yet. Right. It's just I just haven't got the time.
You need to do it.
It's one of those things I want to spend time on. But I mean, it fascinated me trying out bits and pieces because the way the routing works and the modulation in the 2500 is not how Eurorack works.
Is it not? No.
It has all of this because you're sort of making sliders to make connections. It's a very matrix approach as opposed to a patch cable approach.
Okay.
And so you have kind of multiple sources going to multiple destinations that you don't really have with a cable. And so in the modules that they've done, I think you've lost a lot in that. But then in some ways it was kind of Behringer's approach to modular has been, we're going to replicate this old thing and not tell anyone how to use it.
Okay.
Or understand how it works, which is why you've got all this S-Trig, V-Trig business in their Moog copies, and nobody really knows what any of it means, and they've not provided any guidance on it. They've just replicated it with all its flaws and faults, and said off you go. So anyway, that's a bit of a frustration.
And then 2600s used in so much stuff, loads of tracks, and obviously used for R2D2's voice, Spinbert, and the Ark of the Covenant in Raiders of the Lost Ark when you opened it. It's all that sound, and it's on Michael Jackson's Thriller album. All the bass lines are a 2600, so it's got a massive heritage in the music industry.
Well, I mean, again, bringing up Behringer, it does seem to be one of the things they did pretty well. It was Rob Keeble who put it all together from AM Synths, and he knows what he's doing. I've talked to him quite a bit.
Oh, okay, cool.
And the 2600 was, I think, probably the best replication of something or clone of something they've done, because they sort of managed to retain the look and feel of it as well as modelling the sound or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's a very iconic thing. Yeah. And again, it looks weeny in comparison, but then seeing this by itself, as I have in shops and stuff, it's all right. It's all very.
Oh yeah. And this one's been signed by Dina as well.
Oh, nice.
Which is nice. She was at Synthfest a couple of years ago and she did that.
Oh, that's brilliant. So where now then? So at the moment, you're just trying to put that thing together.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to build that at the moment in Japan as we speak. Yeah.
Which will sell to a bunch of people who have the money, which is great.
Yeah.
Other new stuff, you've got a new Microkorg.
Yeah.
What is going to be next? I mean, do you still have a push towards analog stuff, or is there any new surprises around the corner?
There's always going to be surprises. Yeah, I'd like to see maybe another synth in the form factor. Like we were talking about the wave state and the Pop 6 and the mod wave. I think that's a winning formula for us. I'd really like to see a new workstation as well. Because at the moment we don't really have a flagship workstation because the Kronos was discontinued, and we now have the Nautilus, which is basically like a mini Kronos with all the technology but not all the controllers and things on it. So it'd be nice at some point if that was updated. Yeah,
I mean, there's definitely room for that. It's never really been, since the Korg one and the Trinity, it's never really been my bag.
No.
It's like looking at the big Yamahas and stuff. They have everything in it, the same as the Kronos.
They've very much become more of a live instrument, I think, than a studio instrument.
Because they have every sound you could possibly imagine. I guess that's the point.
And that's the thing with the Kronos, why it was so good, because it had the set list on it, and it had smooth sound transitions, both of which were unique at that point.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so massive for us.
Interesting. So do you think Korg's got a definite lean towards more analog stuff? Do you think that's
I don't think they do. I think that's the thing with Korg, because they're very much software, analog, and synths. Synths in all types. Digital synths. So who knows? It's that sort of company.
Yeah. So we
get surprised working for them.
They're just into doing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been Korg Berlin, hasn't there?
Yes,
as well?
and they're doing some really interesting stuff. Different again.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, obviously that's Tats who did all the Volcas and the Minilog and stuff. So, amazing heritage there from an R&D perspective. So I'm excited to see what their first product's actually going to be.
Yeah, they've had that twangy thing, haven't they?
It will be something like that. Yeah, it would be something really out there.
Yeah. But is that a genuine
thing?
Is that a genuine avenue for Korg, or is it like a folly or a?
No, it's a genuine avenue, but they're still finding their way, I think, because it's very experimental, I suppose.
Which is great.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody else doing that. I mean, I get the feeling with. I
can't imagine Roland or Yamaha.
No, I mean, Roland interests me in as much as things like the Jupiter X and the XM.
Yeah.
I read an interview with the guy behind it, who's the big guy, I think.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to see that it's just all about him wanting to. I just want to play sounds on my lap in a park.
Right, okay.
That's his only
that's what it came
push, and that's what he's trying to achieve. And so there's no grand thoughts of we should be doing analog or we should be doing this, that, and the other.
No necessarily. There's no direction. It's just what he wanted to do.
Yamaha just seems to have no personality at all. They just do what they do.
They just do what they need to do.
Yeah. Whereas Korg, you never know where they're going to go or what's going to happen next, which is really interesting.
That's what keeps the brand alive and interesting, I think.
Yeah.
When you look at that timeline, you've got everything from the Donkomatic, then you've got the wave drum, Prophecy, Volcas, you've got all sorts of different Chaos Pad.
Yeah.
All kind of very experimental when they first came out. They didn't even know if they're going to work. They just happened to take off.
Yeah. And do they seem, is there any trouble through, because we had a lot of trouble with component shortages and other fluctuations in financial markets. Is Korg a happy ship as it goes?
It's definitely a happy ship. Obviously during COVID and afterwards there was a lot of turbulence, not necessarily financial but more supply chains.
Yeah.
So that's why we had to have a little pause in things like the Wave State and the Mod Wave and the Op6 because of the Raspberry Pis. So there was a world shortage of those, so we literally couldn't make any. So that's why we had to do the Mark II versions because the Raspberry Pis were different. So we decided to put more powerful ones in. So therefore we changed the model, and things like that happen. They're out of our hands. But and that was actually why the Kronos was discontinued as well. That was a world part shortage of something that was in there.
Oh, interesting.
So all of these things do affect us, but just keep plugging away really.
Yeah.
And if you can't make something, just do something else.
Yeah.
So, which is what we've been doing.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. But now we're back to a more stable condition, I think, generally, where our factories are getting back to normal again. So, but it's taken many years since then, because there's always a massively long knock-on effect.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of legacy and what you have left to rekindle, if that was something, is going to be the Poly 6 and the Monopoly, isn't it?
That would be, I'd love to see the Monopoly reissued. That would be fantastic. That's the one we do get asked about a lot. Since since we actually did the 2600, that one was done, so people moved on to this now. So
of course.
And this one, of course.
Well, people are a pain in the neck, aren't they? They always want something which is not there.
Yeah. But it's nice to have these dreams. And, who knows? Might happen one day.
So other things I haven't seen here would be the drum log, or
we don't have a drum log here actually,
or the SQ. What's it?
64.
Yeah, SQ64.
Yeah, we don't have that either. The hands-on area is just what you saw, so it's because of the mini logs really, and the microphone. And it's all, of course, part of the Korg story which we've not even talked about is the tuners, which we don't really have here.
Oh yeah.
But they're massive for Korg and continue to be, and we invented the first tuner as well. Electronic tuner. So.
Yeah, that's a funny thing, because when I was writing for Gear News, because Jeff does all the guitar stuff there, but we have this flow from Thomann of new products coming up, and there's always a sheet of new tuners, a whole bunch of new Korg tuners.
Yeah.
So what's different this time? Well, I don't know, this one's pink,
there's so many models,
this one's this. It's a crazy market. Yeah. We often forget about the little bread and butter bits that keep everything afloat.
And actually it's funny because a lot of people in the electronic music world obviously know Korg, and a lot of musicians will know Korg, but there's a lot of people who probably, like in the orchestral world, they might not know Korg at all, apart from they've got a tuner.
They've got a
Korg.
tuner, yeah.
That's the only way they know the Korg brand, because they're not really into all this stuff, but they still know Korg because they've got that. So,
Well, it's like Yamaha's brass section, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So actually,
impossible to know.
because there's a lot of player instruments here. So
there are, yes. Cool. So anything else I need to know?
I don't think so. I think we've.
I think that was
most things.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
So there you are. Thanks ever so much to Korg. Thanks ever so much to Luke and everyone at the Musical Museum who made me coffee and looked after me while I was there. It's a fantastic place. You should absolutely go and visit it. Hope that was useful. In the meantime, go and make some tunes.